Welcome to Vialet Studio, where Vialet and her guests share stories of their passions, inspirations, and spiritual journeys. Vialet creates a sacred and fun space for individuals to be able to share information about themselves, their work, and their community. We are so happy you have joined us today. Let's get started with your host, the magical creator of Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, Vialet. Vialet Rain.
Wow, thank you everyone for joining us today for Vialet Studio. I am so excited to have with me today Melinda Gillette, who is an animal communicator, is able, so I always think of the movie as a child. It just came out recently, Dr. Dolittle, that's what it was, that talked to the animals. It was one of my favorite movies as a child. And I remember the big snail in the movie, like he traveled on the big snail. So it really came through. So I love that. So Melinda, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thanks so much, Violet. I am delighted to be here.
So how did you first learn that you were able to communicate with animals? What brought you on that journey and got you to where you are today?
Well, I'll try to edit a long and weird story, but I've ever since I was a little kid, I've just adored animals and always lived with them. The very few times in my life when I lived for a few months without some kind of a companion, they were very difficult. But I heard, really it was in the mid-70s, that Penelope Smith started talking about interspecies telepathic communication. And it took me a few years to catch up with that because I just wasn't in that wavelength at that point. But when I heard about it, I thought, wow, how cool would that be to be able to talk with animals? I wonder how you do it. And I was not at all in a spiritual mode at that point. And I was a project manager and a business person. And it was just kind of stuck in my head for the longest time. I wonder how you do it. I wonder how you do it. And the story is that a gentleman friend had a dog who began tearing out his windows during the summer. Literally, the old house, wavy pane windows, beautiful windows, the dog tore them out. And windows were broken all over the house and the dog got out. He tried all kinds of things. And finally, in desperation, he saw a business card at his veterinarian's that said Terry O'Hara, Animal Communicator. He thought it was probably nuts, but he said, what can I do? I've tried everything else. And that began the link. She did explain to him, she talked to Sam the dog, and Sam explained to her that he was terrified of lightning. And she said, do this, 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 and this. He did. Sam stopped eating windows. And I found out that she taught classes. That was the beginning of a long period. I took several classes from her. I was part of mentoring groups. I was scared to death initially to actually sit down with somebody and talk to their animal because I was sure I was going to get it wrong. No, I thought, I may be making this up. I don't know. Well, and that was probably 25 years ago. And I've been doing this now for about 20 years. And it is such a gift and such a pleasure. And there are still days when, and times when an animal will have a conversation and my reaction to it is, I cannot believe that this is really, that I get to do this. It's so cool.
Well, I think it's cool even for somebody like you that says, I couldn't believe, could this really be happening? Because as people step onto their path, they start you know, being curious, being a seeker, finding out more. I mean, all of us tell people all the time, everyone can do all the things that we do. We're not super special. You can do what we do. And we're also human in the fact that we all say, I can't believe I can do this. Is this real? Is this really true? Is what I'm saying really true? And you know, the real gift in all this is people come back and confirm what we're saying. And then we get really excited. I don't know about you, but I get really excited. I may not show it to them, but later I'm like, wow, that was confirmation. Like, and I've also noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed it, Melinda, but when I'm human, so when I question my gifts, and I still do today, believe it or not, those listening, it still happens today. I might be sitting in a space, I'm like, wow, I can't really do this. I'm really questioning what I do, and it never fails. I have a student or somebody email me, call me, text me, and say, wow, what you told me, this is what happened. This is what happened. It's like the universe going, nope, you don't get to stop. You get to keep moving. Here's your confirmation. This is all working every time. Have you ever had that happen where you're just a little bit in that space where you're like, I'm not sure?
Oh, it happens in almost every session I do. I tell you it does. And it will be, you know, there'll be something coming up and I get a message from the animal. You know, we're in a conversation and I'm thinking, nah, maybe that sounds really weird. And so you can ask my clients, you know, I will say, well, I know this may sound strange, but, and then I will explain what I'm getting and they say, that's exactly right. I have never, when I've doubted, I have yet to have somebody say, no, you know, it really is strange. They always say, that's right.
Right.
I'm going, yes, yes. So it happens all the time.
So do you think people get messages and they're just not sure? They don't trust themselves. They don't believe in it?
Without question.
You know, with their
But,
animals trying to communicate with them.
absolutely. I think my job is to validate the message, really, is to validate the messages that they're already getting and going, oh, I can't be right. And when I do, that's why they get really excited. That's exactly right. That's what I thought. You know, when I tell them something that it seemed a little off and a little strange, sometimes the animals essentially do readings for their people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always a, you know, I kind of tiptoe into that when something is coming through, and that's often preceded by, I know this may sound strange.
Right.
Right.
So, you know, when we can communicate with our animals, it helps with lots of situations. You talked about the animal breaking the windows or going through the windows, right? It's this miscommunication, a misunderstanding from the human to the animal of what their needs are, what they want. So what are some of the strange things that have come up in your readings where animals are really trying to communicate something that's important to them or what's happening? What are some of those examples?
You know, the one that is, this is actually a personal experience, and it wasn't in a reading because it kind of blew my mind away. I live with cats. At this point, this was quite a few years ago, and I was living with quite a few cats. It was maybe 13, 14 years ago. And I had one elder kitty who had had a stroke, and she was sleeping on a big mat in front of the heat in my bathroom, which made showers difficult. However, I also had a young cat he was about 6 months old, and he's a book in himself if I ever get it finished. And one day I was downstairs and Nicholas was just, his tail was fluffed. I mean, really big, fluffy tail. And I said, well, Nicker, what's the matter? And I picked him up and I smoothed his tail and I said, are you okay? And I put him, and he calmed for a second. I put him back down and he fluffed again. And I kept, we went through this silly business with my trying to calm him down 2 or 3 times. And finally I said, okay, I know you've got something to tell me. And he turned and he started walking up the stairs. Okay, we walked up the stairs and got into my bedroom. And Emily, who was the kitty who was ill, was basically, she was blocked. You know, her little back end was blocked, and she was struggling.
Mm-hmm.
So I put Nicker in a room by himself. I closed the bedroom door and I cleaned up the cat and cleaned up Emily and thought, wow, I mean, how could he, it was almost like remember Lassie? If for anybody who's old enough, Lassie to the rescue. This was Nicholas to the rescue. And he did it. This was very physical because I wasn't getting it in my head. But I have had animals talk to me about in consults. I have had animals talk with me about their families' personal lives, about marriages that were having difficulties, about people that they who were in their lives that are underappreciated or overappreciated. Sometimes I do have a background in psychology and worked as a therapist for a time, and I find that eerie occasionally when that sneaks through from an animal.
They're like trying to help their owners. They're like trying to give advice. They're trying to say, hey, pay attention, or all of that. Really, that's pretty awesome.
It is totally awesome. And I absolutely believe that we, including myself, we underestimate the intensity and the depth of the relationships that we have with our animals and the reasons for their being with us. It's not just because there was a fuzzy kitten or a cute puppy somewhere.
So how do you think animals come into our lives? Do they choose us? Or are they chosen before? What has been your experience with that? How does that work?
I believe it's by soul agreement.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that we, before any of us incarnate, we have made agreements with at least the significant individuals in our lives, whether they're human, whether they're coming in a human body, or whether they're going to come in as an animal or however. And we have made an agreement that these are the challenges or the lessons or the joys that we are choosing to experience. And we agree to do this together.
So sometimes when an animal comes into a human person's life, there's not sometimes, but there's a contract with that individual. What are some of the different things that animals come to help us with?
You know, I'm just beginning to understand some of it. What I always thought was that, I've seen them come in because they're going to be with someone during a difficult period in their life. They are going to be there to help raise a child. So they're there for the child and for the parent. They may be there because it's a learning experience for someone. Nicholas, the cat I mentioned before, was a powerful teacher, still is a powerful teacher for me. It's all over the map. And what I'm beginning to understand is that we don't get half of it. It's been something about the increased isolation during this period, COVID-19. So I'm spending a whole lot more time. I now live with 3 cats, and I'm spending a whole lot more time with the 3 of them. I understand that each of them has a different function, our relationships are different, because one of them, Eddie, is here just because I need somebody to snuggle. And he's a very, very affectionate cat. This, by the way, was told me after Nicholas passed. And he said, okay, this is what the other 3 guys have got to do. Okay. There's another cat who is the wise man, who is the more spiritual being. And then I've got one who's the boss.
I own this place. Just
yeah, right. Right, exactly. Yeah. So,
I may not pay the bills, but I own this place. Just so you guys know this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that, so there are all kinds of reasons.
So do people sometimes come to you because they've lost a pet, or a pet's recently passed, just to reconnect? Are you able to help clients at that level?
Absolutely. Sometimes some of my favorite stuff.
Share some stories of that. What's come through in those sessions?
Oh, let me think. This one is very recent, and it was quite sad, because the cat got out during during cold weather and jumped over a fence and through a loose pool cover.
Ooh.
Yeah. I didn't know about that when I was originally contacted. The contact was, my cat is my familiar, and I can't find her. She's lost. She was not talking, and sometimes that happens. Sometimes it happens that she kept telling me she was close by, and she was okay. And I said, okay, fine. And then a couple of days later, the cat was found. And I said, and when I talked to her, I said, and sometimes this does happen. They will tell you, back up a little bit. When I was training, one of the things we learned was that animals never lie. Yeah. They maybe don't lie, they just tell the story that is appropriate to the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, you learn the truth. But in this case, the cat came through this time. She said, yes, I know. I was already in spirit, but she was not ready for me to be gone yet. She'd been the woman's familiar, and she wanted her to know that not only was she going to continue in that role, but that she intended to upgrade it somewhat. And I asked her, I said, does she sleep with you? And she said, yes. I said, and she's been sleeping with you recently? And she said, yes. And the cat would sleep on her pillow by her head. And she's been waking up finding that. And that does happen. And it's real. It is real. It's not the figment of somebody's imagination. The animal's energy truly is there. But
I love that.
very cool. What she told the woman, among other things, was that there were many changes going on in her life right now, and this was a period of expansion for her, and part of what the, the spirit formerly in her cat body was there to do was to help guide her through this. And it was easier to do when she was in spirit form rather than being she was a tiny kitty, a little 5-pound cat body.
Wow. Well, I know, at least from my experience, my dog comes back quite often in spirit. He's been gone quite a while, and he'll show up. He shows up in my dreams, and we spend time together. And what's really interesting about the dreams is the last few I've had with him, I've known he's passed. Like, I know he's on the other side, which is interesting for a dream, because it's like, why are you here? You're on the other side. How can you be here? How can I touch you? How can you lick my face and me feel it? Like, how is this happening, right, in a dream? So he'll come and visit and play with me and spend time with me in my dreams, but he also comes in spirit. So I know that he's around, and he'll just pop into my mind in some of the craziest times. And I know he's here. He's here for a reason. So I think that's awesome that people also feel them sleeping next to them in their same spot and know that they're there. Do our pets, those soul beings, do they come back to us sometimes? You know, there was that recent movie, what was it? A Dog's, can't remember.
Life?
Yeah, where he comes back like 4 or 5 times, and it shows, you know, the people and how he comes. I thought that was like one of my favorite movies, because it had such connection to show how that can happen. Have you found that in your work? Yeah.
Yes. I found when they come back as another animal, and usually people are like, I don't know, he acts so much like Fluffy did, and as often the most, and this is really not my story, this is somebody else's story, but it absolutely blew me away, and I have to tell it. This is my teacher's story, and she was a young, not very confident animal communicator, and she was working out of town every weekend because she'd gotten a reputation down there, so people were having her come down. And she went to a house, and which is the way she worked at that point, and knocked on the door, and this dog came to the door. Hi, I'm her mom. And Terry's going, oh no, please. I'm so not ready for this, to tell this, to go in and tell this woman, and this is in a pretty conservative community into the bargain, to go in and say, well, you know, Rover says he's your mother. But so she just said, okay, thank you. I can't handle this right now. And they were going through the consult, and the woman finally, and this was a young mother, the woman finally said, you know, this is the strangest thing, but I keep thinking that my mother, the dog is my mother.
Wow.
Yeah. And it turned out the baby was new. The grandmother knew that she was not going to be able to stay in her body, but she wanted to watch her grandchild grow up.
Wow, that's really powerful.
I know. And there are soul connections. You know, in this case, she returned in a dog body, and the question was why? Well, the answer was very simple. If she'd come back as a human, she would have been the same age approximately as her grandchild. and unable to watch any of this. But if she came back as a dog, boom, it takes very little time to be mature enough. Now, puppies are pretty active by, they're doing pretty good dog things by 6 or 7 weeks.
And you're in the home, right? You're not like a neighbor, or that you could be swept up, moved away, or you're in the home. You're part of that family and home, which is pretty cool when you think about it, right?
Incredible. It's incredible. Yeah.
So what do people come to you for? What are your clients looking for to find, if somebody was considering, hey, I'm looking to find out more, what are some of the questions they come with when they schedule appointments?
Okay, the biggest ones are illness.
Okay.
What is going on? And I will always say, I'm not a veterinarian, but this is what the animal is talking to me about. So there's illness. Often the question is it time for the animal to leave their body? Sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes not. Should we do this procedure? And that may not be, this may not be life-threatening, but does the animal want this kind of a procedure? Because it would involve, I had one client, and this was several years ago, and the dog, they were considering brain surgery.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was a big deal, and the human in question, it was not a question of money. It was a question of what are the risks. I mean, she knew the veterinary risks, but what does the dog see as the risks? What all is going on? And the dog was kind of like, well, okay, I maybe I do need it. I'm going to leave it up to you. He really did put his faith in his person. And as a matter of fact, the last time I talked to them was just maybe a couple months ago. And the dog is fine. He came through the surgery just fine. It corrected the problem. This was the right thing to do. If he had said, no, I don't want this, I would have said that to the person.
Well, I love that, because a lot of times we do surgeries and we're not sure the dog really or the animal really understands why we did it. And then we put this head thing on them, and then they're like, what the heck did I do to be punished, right? I can see that. Yeah. Why are you punishing me? What did I do? And why am I hurting? And
exactly.
Right? So being able to communicate, this is what's going on.
Right.
And then we've talked earlier about behavior stuff, when an animal has behaviors.
Right. And that's a big one, and lost animals.
Lost animals.
That's the hardest possible thing.
It is. It's very difficult when because animals become our family, our children.
Right.
They're everything, and to know what's going on and what they're thinking, and to really know that they're smarter than we think they are, and they understand a whole lot more than we think. If somebody wants to connect to their animals, what would you tell them to do? We tell people you could do this if you really wanted to. How can they be open to this communication?
The biggest and the hardest part is to stop doubting yourself. I think the only way you can do that is to experience something that you can, that you can validate. If you are watching your animal, watching some kind of animal behavior, say, let's just say for instance, and this I'm making up, your dog has begun to follow the cat around. And you're going, come on, would you cut it out? You're making the kitty very nervous. And watch the dog. And sit back for a while I would talk to the cat in that instance and say, what is going on? And the cat is apt to say, I really am feeling a little off. And Rover is following me around because I'm trying to find a place to go and hide, and he doesn't want me to do that. Of course, when cats hide, that can be an indication that they are looking for a place to pass.
Right, right.
And yeah, and so in that case, the message would be, I don't want him to follow me. I don't want him to follow me anymore. Ask the cat what the cat really wants. Does he or she need help? Does he or she want to pass? Does the cat need a doctor? Does the cat need a different home? Does the cat need to be euthanized? And often they will tell you. And you get it. You just have to trust it. What I've learned is that often the crazier it sounds, the more likely it is that it's coming true.
I love that. I love that.
The little simple things, if you want to talk, as a student, we would do things like talk to the dog or the cat, whoever we were speaking with, about what they like to eat. I actually struggled with that because, I could visualize a big green bowl, but I didn't, it wasn't, those little things the animals will tell you. They'll be very friendly about it and go, okay, that's a stupid question, but okay, I really like my crunchies.
I like my snack time, thank you very much.
Right. But when it's something a little bit, I think this is our culture and we're coming out of it. We shortchange the animals in our lives because they look like animals. I can remember as a little kid, I heard about the Dumb Friends League, and I was incensed. And I told my mom or my dad, but they're not dumb. Why is it called the Dumb Friends League? And it was patiently explained that they're dumb because they can't speak. They can't speak language. Well, I know different than that too now, but that's just an example that we assume because they are wearing a dog or a cat suit or whatever, that they are a lesser being and a lesser soul.
Yep, they're very intelligent. They're super smart, and they help us in so many ways if we'll allow them to, right? Yes. And I think it's about allowing them to, right? You can't do that because I got this, and they're like, I'm just trying to help.
Yeah, right. Well, there is that, and they are, like the case of the grandmother who came back. Don't be so sure that the spirit of the cat in your living room is not a very wise being who has been human in many lives, or maybe even in other alien, what we would call alien forms, that they have lived in other places. Some of these animals have been around a very, very, very long time. And they have been wise humans, they have been wise others, their spirituality. Now, granted, you may get, their spirituality is almost unquestioned, but the reason I'm laughing is that I went to a client's house, and he had a couple of dogs and he had a cat. And one of the dogs had passed, and he had a new dog. And I walked in the front door, which was not easy because they were golden retrievers, and this one was just, hi, how are you? And just, golden retrievers by their breed are kind of hyper and really friendly. And this one was super hyper, super friendly, and just absolutely just giddy and silly. And I looked at him, I looked at the dog, and I looked at the guy, and he's, yeah, I know, it's his first life. And it so was. I mean, the dog just, everything was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Not wise at all, but totally charming. And I think just exactly what was needed, interestingly enough, in that situation at that point. Because there had been a lot of sadness in the house.
So that would bring in a lot of happy energy. That's a pretty cool story, right?
Yeah.
And such the innocence and everything. Like, this is really cool. This is so cool. So glad you're here. It's really cool. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And so how was, I don't quite understand how a brand new soul manages to make that agreement, but I think that maybe was, you know, brand new soul, I'm going to bring happiness to somebody, and here is someone who really did need it.
Oh, I love that story. I love that story. Well, thank you, Melinda, for being on our show. When people call me and say, hey, do you know Animal Communicator? They email me or they reach out, I always direct them back. Melinda, contact Melinda. And so I always refer clients and people. I don't always know if they all take me up on it, but I definitely do send them that way. And so if people wanted to reach out to you to schedule a session or be able to connect to their animals, what's the easiest way for them to connect with you? And I will also add it on the bottom here of the video.
Probably the very easiest way is through my website, which is pretty simple. It's melindagillette.com. And I have to say, embarrassingly enough, that it is out of date. Don't let that run you off. I'm in the process of trying to fix it up and probably get a whole new one, but I'll keep the same address. So it's melindagillette.com.
I love that. Well, websites take a lot of work. I know you're constantly on. If you're going to have an updated website, you almost have to be on there every week doing stuff to it. It takes a lot of effort and work. So definitely check out Melinda's website. Don't let it scare you off. She's amazing. Just reach out and contact her. Thank you so much for being on the show and being part of this. I really do appreciate that. I love having you on here. And so anything else that's going on with COVID, we're not doing fairs, so we can't really talk about events. It makes it really kind of tough. You know, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be doing this. So it's a different time. Look at who's coming to say hello.
Eddie.
Eddie. Oh. Eddie goes, I want to be part. Let me be part. Thank you so much for being on there. Is there anything coming up that you're doing recently, even on Zoom or virtually?
Not that's animal communication specific. However, I think that my belief is that some of the kinds of groups that I will do or that I've done in the past really require a lot of very close, he's really about to knock me over, require a lot of very close work. So I probably will be putting something together on Zoom. I've done some things called Sharing Animal Wisdom, which is looking at the age and looking at the old wisdom of the animals.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, he's not going anywhere.
He's like, nope, I'm going to be in this whether you want me to or not.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Eddie. But that I'd like to put that up on Zoom and see how it works if we can do animal communication that way.
I love that. I love that. I think that would be awesome. So let us know when you start doing some of that so that, you know, we have it out there. I love sending people your way. And people are always looking for ways to connect and do that. So be awesome. Well, thank you so
Oh,
much.
Thank you, Violet. This was fun.
It was a lot of fun. And I loved Eddie. So thanks for Eddie for joining us.
Yes,
Right?
came right in on cue. Right? Take care.
I love that. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching this show. I hope to see you really soon at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us. To find out more about Vialet and how she can help you discover your spiritual gifts, head over to discoveryourspiritualgifts.com and on YouTube at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts. You can also send a personal message to Vialet through email, violet@discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. Until next time, remember, we are meant to have abundant and joyful lives. We hope to see you really soon at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts.
Discover connection, awaken sacredness, become empowered. Come experience the difference at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts.